Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This panel is about technological sovereignty of Europe. My name is Jęcz, and I am an analyst with Polityka Insight. And we have with us Mr. Witold Drożdż, the member of the board of Orange Polska, Magdalena Gaj, the president of, or CEO of EXATEL, Michał Kobosko, member of the European Parliament, Renew Group, and Przemysław Kuna, the president of the Electronic Regulatory Office. We have a very broad topic to discuss, so let me start with questions right away. The reason for today's discussion is the publication of the report on European sovereignty and technology, from ideas to practices. So I have hard copies with me. Please help yourself. We distributed them at the back of the room. And whoever listens to us by streaming or whoever prefers the digital version, you can download that report from Political Insight website. And this report was produced in the partnership with Orange, and I had the pleasure to be the author of it. So the title is From the Idea to Practice, and my idea for this conversation is about the technological sovereignty. So let's start with the introductory question for each of you. So let's try to think about technological sovereignty. That's a very sort of fuzzy concept. There are so many definitions of that. Some people claim that there are over 20. So my first question is, what is your understanding of technological sovereignty? Please be very succinct, like 2 words. What do you think about it? And let me start with Witold Drożdż. And I will ask each of you to answer this question. What is your understanding good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think that technological sovereignty is like a buzzword that has been popular for the past few years. Another example is resilience. But recently, we also talked a lot about energy sovereignty or commodities sovereignty. So there are many dimensions of that word. There are many other sovereignties that are equally important. But what is the common denominator is sovereignty in each of these instances. So sovereignty, in my understanding, is a freedom of making your own choices, freedom of doing things out of being coerced to do it. And depending on which dimension of sovereignty we are talking about, we focus on different things. In case of technology, given the fact that our reality is so digitalized, obviously we think about digital technology in first place. So we think about all these technological dimensions that contribute to our digital world. I think that the authors of the report that you have just quoted provided very neat definition of sovereignty. I think that what really deserves our attention here is capability to have our proprietary research in technology and ability to commercialize the results and ability to set up partnerships and to identify and choose partners for your endeavors, because the reality that we are navigating. But the question is whether all these choices are completely free and fully conscious. Magdalena, what is your understanding of this notion? I think that if I had to define it with one word, I would say this is all about security. It's about physical security and economic security, likewise. And freedom. And the second word in my definition is freedom. Freedom to make your own choices. Freedom that is not subservient to anything or to anyone or to any other country, to any other economy. Because just imagine if your infrastructure, whether this is energy or telecommunications or anything else, if that is dependent on providers from a country that can be facing sanctions or had political elections and things went a certain way, and all your hardware is not getting updates. I'm speaking about the critical infrastructure, but it could be any infrastructure. If this is, well, it is controlled by the software is not getting updated, and then this is, everything is at risk. So I think that basically the development of the country is at risk. I believe that we have a core definition here. So the freedom to make choices, freedom to set up partnerships, security. What would you contribute to this definition? Hello. I believe that there are many definitions, and the topic is becoming more and more popular. It has become almost a standing topic of the deliberations that we have in the European Parliament. Over the past few months, we have been working on the report addressing the question of technological sovereignty of Europe, and hopefully very soon the European Parliament will take a vote on that. But let me quote a definition that is really speaking to me, and I think that it's fairly complete, as it combines things that are needed to understand that concept. This is Europe's capability to develop, deliver, and maintain technologies that are needed for the welfare of the European citizens and for the development and growth of the European companies. On top of it, this is capability to have independent operation and make independent decisions in the global and globalized environment. To me, this definition is really speaking, because it really makes it very clear that this is sovereignty, which means that is about us and our relations with our partners. And partners are one way, or they may change and can become very different, or may decide to go the other way. And this is something that we have no control over. And the situation of Europe is changing as we speaking. So we either are going to have a modern digital economy in Europe, or we will have no economy whatsoever in Europe. Because today you cannot have other economy but digital economy. Each company is digital. Some companies are more digital, others are less digital, but without digital solutions, there is no future. Thank you. Przemysław, over to you. Well, to me, all I can do is just to agree with previous panelists. But I would like to cast some light on one thing. We all agree on the definition of the sovereignty. Sovereignty is like independence and all these things related to that. But to me, sovereignty of technology is like another phase or another stage of sovereignty, because sovereignty has been traditionally understood as the sovereignty as being like safe in the face of external threats. Over the past few years, we were speaking about keeping our services and networks secure from some hackers and also from third country agents who may try to attack us. Now we are speaking about the next step, and this is about technical security. So if we are not able to control what's happening in our networks, it may turn out that the networks may collapse at some point or crash. And finally, I think that whenever we speak about sovereignty, we have to really have very comprehensive in our understanding of sovereignty. If we speak about the technological sovereignty, we have to remember about critical infrastructure that powers that. This is electricity. Okay, you were the last to speak. So you were in a tight spot because everyone else provided their answer before you. But my last question goes to you first and then to other panelists, namely, what are the goals and objectives of technological sovereignty? But let's make it more clear and precise. What is the purpose of that sovereignty? Because this is just a general idea or a general ambition. But what should be the specific outcome? So what is the purpose for it in terms of the government, in terms of the society in Poland, in Europe? What is the purpose of being sovereign in terms of technology? Well, this is a very broad question. I would start from the backside. So if we are able to defend ourselves against hacking attacks, I'm not even speaking about very tangible threats such as those that are faced by Ukrainians, but if we are able to plan and design and deliver our networks, grids, and solutions in such a way that we are able to support critical information and we are able to support the general public across the board, it means that we are cyber independent, or we have cyber sovereignty or technological sovereignty. And to be more specific, I think that sovereignty calls more capex. It takes more time. It takes more thinking about what you build and what you do. And it takes more parties to work together. It's not just a single operator or single company that can make us sovereign. There must be a scale that can be achievable only at the national level. And the EU has been providing guidelines for that for some time. But for us, it must be a very global approach to the security of Polish networks, whether copper or fiber or mobile networks. I'm also speaking about the satellites. Everything has to be comprehensively designed and operated. Michał, the same question to you. One key goal that is really delivered by the sovereignty, tech sovereignty of Europe. I think that, in a sense, I answered this question during the first round. But let me reinforce this message. Without digital sovereignty and without digital growth, there will be no competitiveness for Europe. We all speak about it. Everyone, almost everyone, read at least the excerpts of Draghi's report. It seems that for the past year, the European Commission has been trying to deliver all these points that were covered in Draghi's report. For instance, in his report, we read that when it comes to digital solutions, we are dependent on non-European suppliers, like 80% of it. So if you are dependent on the third-party provider, like 80%, it means that you are totally dependent, 100% dependent. Because each of you may think, like, what app you are using, what services you have on your smartphone. And just imagine that those that you use most often suddenly disappear. So what are you supposed to use? We have not created any corresponding equivalent solutions for the American services. So the discussion about sovereignty is not that we are going to develop all like the European counterparts for the non-European services. But my point is that competitiveness of our economy which is going downhill, and we've been discussing that for over a year. And the European Commission and the Parliament, European Parliament, are really addressing that. Regretfully, we have not been able to actually stop the trend or reverse the trend, and the competitiveness of Europe versus other continents continues to fall. On top of it, you have the developments in the United States and the new administration speaking the new language, and at least some of the American companies are following the suit. And they have the right to say America first, but we have our right to say Europe first. Because this is where we live. This is our place on this planet, and there are no reasons why we should accept someone else trying to impose something on us. And why should we accept that someone would be very transactional about the digital economy to put pressure on Europe?
Magda, you mentioned sovereignty is safety, first of all. So is this the key element that technical sovereignty should be addressing to ensure safety for Europe? Yes, safety, that's one aspect, but mainly I'd like to talk about economic safety or security. I agree. We should say Europe first, loud and clear. All the events that happened globally, starting with the pandemic, which made Europe realize that it's dependent on the supply chain, mainly Asian suppliers. It made us realize that we had to, we need to place manufacturers of simple products, even like face masks in Europe. We should be independent of external suppliers. Then all the war actions happened directly abroad, but also in the Middle East. It showed that technology is something we should be focusing because, let's be honest, if large-scale war ever happens, such war will not focus on large-scale military facilities, but these will be small objects and new technologies. So yes, security is one thing and safety, but also economic development. When we talk about technology and the way we define it, that it has to do with freedom, development, and safety, I'd like to add that because we have this discussion, we discussed this topic, and we are aware of it, it leads us to saying that we are now aware of building technological sovereignty, and then this is why Europe is able to accelerate its development, its growth, because modern technologies, it stands for development. We will not grow by demonstrating our cultural heritage. Yes, we have excellent, greatest cultural heritage, but we need to catch up with Asia, with the world, with the States, in terms of developing new technologies. So the technological sovereignty policy creates this opportunity. We may increase European spending. On European research and development, we are now able to construct European facilities, testing facilities, to test either new or already created technologies. We're able to test them, certify them, and then implement them on our single market. So I believe economic security gives us the freedom of choice and development, of course. Thank you. Witold, now I would like you to summarize this part of our discussion. Is there any topic you'd like to put special focus on, or would you like to add something we have not mentioned? Is there any other aim or of sovereignty, Europe's sovereignty? Well, First, I'd like to introduce yet another thread in terms of methodology. Maybe it's not the right timing, but we are talking about aims and objectives. But let's start by monitoring and diagnosing the starting point first. We may adopt a positive agenda, or we may adopt a reactive agenda, depending from what the starting point is. So I believe we are really recovering what we have already lost. That's what I'm in favor of, this approach. But I'd like to mention what my colleagues already discussed. And there are two trends that have to do with the technological objectives. One thing is security, and one thing is the well-being, economic well-being. And I believe these two terms encompass everything we've been talking about. But there is yet another element in terms of security. That's nothing new. You probably are aware of that, but it was not mentioned. And it's a political dimension, because nowadays technological sovereignty threats lead to serious malfunctions of democratic processes. They pose a risk to our values, and they may cause potential and they may abuse potential deficits, and we are aware of existing deficits in technological sovereignty. And we are exposed to certain risks when it comes to political security. So we should also define objectives in that area, in that scope of sovereignty. But how would I define an objective for technological sovereignty? I think it would be to to regain the possibility to make free choice and to shape the digital environment in such a way that corresponds to our aspirations and values. Oh, thank you. And thank you for bringing our attention to the democratic processes and how important sovereignty is for us to be able to decide for ourselves in Europe. And now I'd like to proceed in this debate from the concept to practice, from the general to the detailed. I have the first specific question, and I would like to ask President Kuna this question. It's about regulatory authorities' role in striving for technological sovereignty. It's a venture which requires cooperation on many different levels, and sovereignty also translates to capacity to create and stand for its rights. So if you have rights, but you're not able to enforce your rights, this is not the right situation. So how are you doing? What is the relationship between the regulatory legislation, and what is the actual role of regulators in implementing technological sovereignty? From your perspective, you're a person who will be dealing with this subject in Poland now. Oh, there is a lengthy response coming. The regulatory authority is created to reinforce the market and values which are related to the diversity of a market. I believe this is the general definition of a regulatory authority. And let me describe it in the Polish conditions. We have the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority, and we are using proven models. We can actually all agree that this is something that we have already tested and we have knowledge about, and the requirements are quite clear. Requirements towards operators, but we also regulate the market in such way that it develops and that opportunities are created for smaller players, weaker players. There are also some areas which require more regulation, and others which do not need as much. But I would say that all the areas are very important. I would like to focus on the operators, on the technology and networks. In this topic, we discuss different frequencies. My obligation is to make sure that this area is well regulated. And after several years of being a president, we learned how to work with frequencies. And now this is something that we have quite a lot of expertise. I would even say this is well organized. Now, one thing that we are facing is the satellite frequencies. So the Cosmic Agency is our partner. Also, the European Union is our partner. We are thinking about how to manage frequencies so that services that will be provided would be complementary in their nature. It would be beneficial if all states would cooperate with one another. It's quite clear now that if you do not follow European regulations, then quality of signal is worse. And it was well manifested when Russians started distorting our signals, and that affected the being able to see the positioning of military units, especially the flying objects. So it's quite clear, quite evident that they're able to distort signals. And we as Europeans should be particularly interested because it makes our lives more difficult in the eastern flank. So cooperation needs to be strong. That's one area. Electromagnetic area is yet another one. I'm not even starting this discussion, but that's another element of our work because we see what kind of devices are now marketed, and we need to make sure citizens' safety needs to be ensured. We just forget how risky a strong electromagnetic field near a human head is. People don't remember about this. But for 2 years now, we have been enforcing a whole range of different service acts, and they regulate data services, a whole range of such services. Some regulate the market, and we are about to adopt the Dayton Act, which is meant to define European networks, their architecture. So we are really in very close cooperation with all European states, and I don't think I'm revealing anything new. We also invited Ukraine and Montenegro. These are not voting countries, but they are members of this group. They have passive participation rights, but they are involved. So we need them to know, or at least be able to set the perspectives for their development. Now, the PSA or DMA acts have already been enforced and in the EU. Poland is catching up, I can say. What we managed to do, we implemented the DSA directive into Polish legislation. Now it's done on the governmental level. I think any day now, this week, we'll have the first reading in the parliament and the public debate. So the question is, will we be able as a country to accept what I believe is a very good document, very good provisions that will allow us to actually operate on the market of digital content, because this is the Services Act. This document covers a whole range of subjects that will be prohibited. It's like hate speech, or hate in general, but it also covers inciting to commit criminal activities like murder, a whole range of activities that we should be focusing on. And if it's adopted in conformity with the EU recommendations, then our institutions will be able to remove harmful content so that it's not displayed anymore. There's also a very broad-ranging debate about the internet and its future, but we have to go this direction, because if we open a window, if we don't open the window for ourselves to legally influence such content, that will be a very detrimental path. But going back to your question, we, Poland, we do not have a path experience in that, and we will not have it because we have no Polish legislation in place. But it's taking time. I believe. Okay, in April, there was a conviction. The president of Digital Services Office was indicted. But now we are able to observe the European market. There's lots of different questions or meetings organized about from a couple to a dozen per quarter. We are involved. We speak for Poland. We speak for Polish operators or Polish government. But it's difficult for me to say what the actual functioning is in terms of these regulations. There is no framework, there is no tracks. So we are waiting for the legislative decisions to be made.
And speaking of Brussels, I believe that the greatest problem, in my opinion, within the European Union is such that the regulations have to be somehow aligned with the countries that have to implement them. So this is like a rough guideline, which way to go. But on the other side, each country can make some adjustments. If there are major divergences in the approach, then there is no cohesive approach, and this is the first regulatory hurdle. Another hurdle is trivial but practical. Each country is different. The south of Europe is different from the north of Europe, and Romania is a completely different case. Even when you look at the landscape and terrain, know how to have uniform treatment for everyone so that it's not it doesn't exclude anyone, and at the same time it is fairly suitable for everyone. Okay, so if I may follow up on what you said, I believe that regulators face an important challenge with the upcoming regulations, because this is the beginning of the discussion with the major providers of apps, overseas providers. So when we speak about the technology stack, we are right at the top, because this is not the networks, it's apps. And regulators were first to be equipped with the tools to block content or to remove content. And I think that the regulators will be like the first players who will have a direct crash with the colleagues from overseas in the technological domain. So I believe that the collaboration between the regulators, well, we don't know what it's going to be like, whether they are working on some shared methodologies or approaches. I think that Mr. Drożdż will be able to cast some light, because to my knowledge, the French regulator was very much involved in this discussion. That brings us close to the whole question of the digital tax. I don't really want to dwell on that, because this is a sensitive topic. But I think that it should be a shared concern for all the countries, because it's pointless for each member state to have their individual fight against big techs. I think that Europe should stand as one if we want to have a cohesive and shared policy for tech sovereignty. Yes, let me respond to that right away. There is some action going on. We are fully aware as regulators that if each country wants to fight a big tech company on their own, they stand no chance. We need to act as the European Union, but each of us as a member of this European organization of regulators is supported with the methodology, etc. So the EU takes leadership. The EU tries to regulate the largest tech players. And in the case of Poland, until we have the transposition of the European laws, we cannot do it because we step beyond the Polish legal framework. And just a specific question. Last week, I got notified about hate speech. So one of the associations in Poland notified me about it, and I have no power whatsoever to actually moderate this text or remove that. But what I could do, or what my office could do, is to send it over to the European institutions, and the European Union, acting on the basis of the European law, can actually demand that such hate speech is removed. So there are such tools available. Okay, so since we are in Brussels with our discussion, now my next question goes to Michał Kobosko. From the perspective of the European Commission and the European institution, what is the current status of the transatlantic dialogue between Europe and American big techs? What European institutions do to secure tech sovereignty of Europe and to support the member states, including the national regulators, at the local level? So what is happening right now and what should start happening so that we are really effective in our attempts to enforce the regulations that we passed? So the first thing, transatlantic dialogue, well, I think that everyone is able to see that, what's happening there. It's not easy. The past 9 months, it's been one step forward, one step back. That's about the customs, custom tariffs, the risk of the trade war between Europe and the US, and how that affects the European economy and European manufacturers. That's a tough fight, especially that President Trump's administration is using tech companies as their leverage, and at the same time, they speak on behalf of American techs, representing them vis-à-vis European authorities. We stand on the position that the American companies or companies from other parts of the world are welcome, provided that they meet the regulations that are applicable in Europe. So the problem emerges when the US claims that the US companies don't want to be forced to respect European regulations, or the American president actually makes demands that European regulations do not apply to the US companies. And try to imagine just the reverse situation, but we would demand that some American regulations do not apply to European companies operating in the US. It sounds absurd, but this is the reality that we are facing. Now, we need to do a lot. The Commission and the Parliament have been in place for 1 year, so we have 4 years in this term. And my impression is that the Commission is very serious about Draghi's report and the Netta's report about the single market. And in my opinion, we don't have a single market in Europe, despite the fact that we have been talking about it for decades. Because a single market means that we have a single market across all the critical areas of or sectors in the economy. We know what's happening with digital services and our financial services in Europe. We've been speaking about it for years, but nothing has been done. And now, in terms of the upcoming regulation, you mentioned the DNA, Digital Networks Act, that will be presented by the Commission in mid-December. This is the package of regulation for the telecom market. Everyone is looking forward to it. The entire telecom industry. We all speak about tech sovereignty. I need to learn that term, tech sovereignty. So everyone wants to have tech sovereignty in place, but to have it, we need connectivity. We need to have robust telecom companies. Without telecom operators, we can forget about it. So this is a major challenge. So we are facing a very fundamental questions. Shall we allow European telecoms to merge and consolidate? This discussion has been going on for decades, but now telecom operators are not in favor of the investors. They are not considered to be attractive assets. They don't have money to invest. They don't have capex. They don't have economy of scale because they are fragmented. Chinese operators have hundreds of millions of customers. In Europe, an average telecom operator may have, I don't know, 4 million or 5 million customers. So with all the respect, Luxembourg, it's not a big country, and they have 4 operators. So consolidation is the first question. What's next? Allocation of frequencies. That's a huge money being invested. And we know that the government sort of took it as a dividend, digital dividend, but did not always spend them on the right purposes. And the whole thing about simplification, sovereignty and simplification and deregulation. Omnibus is my favorite word. Everything is an omnibus today. So serial packages of simplifications geared to simplify different sectors. And then the Cloud and AI Development Act, Q1 2026. So this is bringing it all closer to the needs of the European industry. Overall, I am under the impression that all these regulations and super regulations that are adopted in Europe should have a common denominator with the industrial policy pursued by Europe. Regulations should be practical and pragmatic. They should not be suspended in some theoretical reasoning that makes it hard to understand. And even the European companies do not really know how to navigate that and how to comply with all this reporting and other requirements. So there is tons of work to be done. It's good. There is a purpose of there is a sense of purpose in this activity, and there is this notion that if we fail to do it now, if we fail to do it right, we will be lagging behind the global technological development. Regretfully, we are approaching the end of the panel, but since we have representatives of the telecom industry on this panel, I would like to stay with communications. Let's put aside the regulation and legislation, and let's revisit our main claim from idea to practice. And let's look at the specific dimensions of tech sovereignty. As we heard from Madam Gaj, one of the practical approaches is the technological stack. So this is like a collection of various infrastructure pieces that make the technologies work together. And the whole thing about simplification, sovereignty and deregulation, all these regulations and one of the fundamental elements are networks. So what is the role that networks play in Europe's ambition to be tech sovereign, to have tech sovereignty? Do we have tech sovereignty when it comes to the networks? And if not, what needs to be done to achieve that? To have this tech sovereignty at one level of the technological stack. Thank you. I think that all of us unanimously agree, both panelists and the audience, that communications and telecom networks are the foundation or the blood system, blood vessels for everything else. Without connections, without redundant networks, we are not going to have the foundation for all the other elements of the technology stack. And we won't have the digital economy. So it sounds obvious, but I think that we should repeat this message over and over again, because not everyone shares this understanding. Not everyone understands that telecom operators should be also supported in their efforts. I have been working in the telecom market for 25 years. I've been watching its development from various perspectives. Once as an entrepreneur, then as a deputy minister, and also as a regulator. So I had a 360 degrees view. And it is true that the way you see things depends on where you sit or stand. So, but I think that given my sort of omnidirectional perspective, my opinions can be quite objective because I was able to take those different perspectives while watching the market. So telecom operators have to put tremendous effort and a lot of investments to keep the foundation in place, to make sure that we have room for the digital economy to grow. So everything that is above telecom networks is feeding on the telecom networks. We used to have at some point a global discussion about the charges and fees for digital highways. So basically a new type of toll for digital highway for the digital apps. No one is questioning tollway on the roads, on the highways. This is natural. But here, when this proposal was made, it triggered a heated discussion, and eventually the idea was dropped. But since the European Commission and the regulators need to remember all those efforts that the providers of the foundations have to put in to keep it in place. So moving on
to the technological sovereignty issues, which, let's remember, networks are the base, the foundation required for all the other elements to function. So for me, as a person representing a telecommunications operator, we are talking about a realistic influence on the design, development, and maintenance of infrastructure. Only then will we be able to build sovereignty. What I'm talking about, it's a possibility, but also having resources to introduce their own technological solutions that could replace eventually the solutions that are currently applied in all networks globally, which come from overseas or from Asia. We should support the development of our own solutions, and we should invest in the same. EXATEL does exactly that, and we are willing to share experience with our colleagues. Why is this so important? It's because, and I'm going back to the first question, because it all boils down to security. Our networks include devices, but also we have access to end users. And this is why it's so crucial. When we implement our own technical solutions, and when we create safe infrastructure, and we offer the sense of safety, security to the state, but also to our citizens, this is invaluable. It's crucial because this makes us resistant to geopolitical incidents, economic incidents, wars. And I believe such resilience and such sovereignty of networks, this is what it is. We should focus on developing our own European solutions that we will be able to install in our networks so that we are sovereign and independent from, for instance, from our suppliers who refuse updates of software, which was the case. Okay, at the end, I'd like to ask Witold Drożdż about security. This conference is uncertain times. That's one of the titles. So we have concerns. We are afraid of infrastructure attacks. You also mentioned it. And thinking about security, have we not taken this into account enough? Only invasion in Ukraine made us realize how important security is. So what is the practical perspective? Of course, we can talk about different levels of security, software, chips, and so on. But let's stay with networks and connectivity. What does it mean to have secure connectivity in Poland on a European level? What actions need to be taken? What measures should be implemented to feel that we are really secure? Well, I will share a bitter comment. I hope it's not the last one and that we'll have a positive note to finish. Let me mention your question to President Gaj. You asked if we are able to say that we are dealing with network sovereignty and connectivities already. Well, I would say we're still dealing with the last case of sovereignty. And I'm sharing a perspective of the telecom market. We are living at a time in a reality which is super restrictive in terms of regulations. And these regulations describe a world which is long gone. It's a world which existed 10 years ago or more. In the meantime, we experienced COVID, a full-scale war. The four riders of apocalypse, in fact. We should have anticipated this after the Crimea incident. We are also dealing with something that the media does not give much coverage, but we are dealing with a severe climatic crisis and resultant weather conditions. So the question we should ask ourselves, whether the decade-old regulations and the willingness to continue projects, which made sense 10 years ago, 5 years ago, such as investing public funds or connecting even the most distant households to internet, is it still our priority? Or in circumstances of being a frontline country, which is Poland's situation, and in a situation of high risk exposure of our country, for instance, to such risks as unstable electricity supply. We all know the electricity mix. We know electric networks condition. it's tested now and then by floods. So given our geopolitical conditions and also economic and energy market conditions, should we not, perhaps, to some level, be more cautious and redirect public funds to things that are really important from the perspective of building resilience? Now, when we think about telecom operators and the telecom market, we should support those operators so that they can build redundant solutions, which, in face of these historical challenges that we're facing, these operators are not able to do. So maybe it's about time to make a fundamental change and shift in our thinking and where we are and what is ahead of us, what is our job. I believe we agree on the declarative level when we discuss things, but the way we act shows that we're acting as if nothing happened over the last few years. Okay, thank you. But I'd like to finish on a brighter and lighter note. I understand this was a dim picture, but quite a realistic one. And I hope it sounds right. And I hope our organizers will forgive us that we're asking one more question. And it's about what is the one thing that makes you optimistic that achieving sovereignty is possible? It can be a single initiative, a publication, a product, anything, application, something that you understand sovereignty is feasible, accessible, or something that is close. Mr. President, I think cooperation is a highlight. Given all the experience that we had, that my colleagues mentioned, these were difficult times. We need to learn from our experience, and I believe cooperation, collaboration in Europe is doing well. And for the last month, I observe Poland and the European Commission. We are really speaking the same language. We start being more and more visible, and we are able to implement and influence what is implemented in Poland. I am a politician, and I look at politicians' engagement in the technological sector because politicians are the ones who will decide. So I noticed that governments of the biggest European states are engaged in dealing with technological sovereignty. This is what Berlin has put on their agenda. So did France. On the 15th of November, there will be a technological sovereignty summit in Berlin with Merz, with Macron. And this is beyond talking. These are specific decisions, concrete decisions, not requirements imposed by Brussels. It's individual states who understood where we are technologically. It's not just that we are losing with other global players, but that we are not handling challenges. You mentioned flood. Flood actually destroyed the networks in 2 hours. We also have other experience to learn from. We have operators in Ukraine who managed to support the functioning of critical infrastructure elements for more than 100 hours. Let's learn from them. They have been learning in extreme conditions. Let's draw conclusions from their experience. It's a new experience in Europe. So we are being serious, and long live Europe. We are really fighting in realistic way. We want more resilience and more safety. My turn. I'll share my most recent experience, quite a specific one, strictly relating to technological sovereignty. Yesterday, I paid a visit to a small Polish company near Warsaw. And this is a manufacturer, an independent manufacturer employing 50 workers of mobile, satellite, connectivity for the military. A backpack device, an incredible solution. I will not elaborate on that, but not only do they supply this product to our special units, special forces, but they also supply Italian military and French military. So why French? Well, France rarely buys anything that is non-French, just as Germans. But this company was chosen as the best supplier, and they are now in the manufacturing phase. To me, this is a great achievement. I was really impressed. I even shared it with my family this morning over breakfast, that it makes my heart warm. And I believe this is an optimistic example of building technological sovereignty in Europe. And Witold Drożdż, you are the last one. Well, long live Europe. This is not the most optimistic slogan, but I'd like to say that we discussed this in many different places, and we should take advantage of the fact that so many interesting reports show up. And it shows me that we already noticed that there is a problem, and slowly but surely we are starting dealing what is in this world. And it's not too late. It's a wake-up call, but it's not too late. Thank you for sharing your ideas and your practical experience, and I encourage you to read the report. Thank you.
Myślisz, że to ktoś wyjątkowy, miłośnik kultury, kto sypie cytatami z pamięci. A to może być ktoś, kto na wakacje pakuje książkę, tę samą co rok temu. To możesz być ty. Bo czytanie nie jest dla wybranych, jest dla wszystkich. Podziel się tym.
It can look like this, or like this. It is threatened, but it is our responsibility to protect it. For each person, it means something different. But when we reach it, we all know what it looks like, what it sounds like, or how it feels. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together. Freedom.